Hey, little party tip. Throw this stuff out. Don't shove it down your garbage disposal or you will be very unhappy the next day. Okay, Chris, let's show them how to chop away.
First thing I want to do is hold up my knife a bit, make sure it's actually ready to go. It's not going to be, this isn't sharpening it, it's just straightening the blade a bit so that everything chops smoothly.
Explain that a little bit more.
So the blade edge itself is sharpened by taking away metal using some kind of sharpener, but when you use the blade, whenever it hits solid surfaces, the blade bends a little bit because it gets really, really thin at the edge. And what that little device does, this honing rod, straightens the blade out. So it doesn't remove any metal, it just straightens it up. That's why I'm just glancing over the sides at the same angle it was sharpened.
Gotcha. Okay.
So what I like to do is take an edge off first when cutting these. Take one edge off and then put that down. Then you got a nice flat surface and it's not rolling all over the place. And I can cut into the size I want.
Now we're dicing these into small pieces.
Right. So I'm going to take another half of it.
See his finger placement though? So there's lots to chop, so you're gonna see it lots of times. You don't have to stop and go back. But what he does is he takes a 3-finger rule like this, like that, and then he does that.
Right, so the idea is these 3 fingers, and then use this knuckle. So you tuck the fingers in so that the knife can't hit them, and then you just slice away a bit. You don't slice down and in, because that's how you get your fingers cut. So when I'm coming this way, I just go, then you use your fingers to guide the knife.
He can go really, really fast because of the way he's holding his fingers. I didn't learn that when I was chopping as a teenager. Coconut oil first. Yeah, we haven't put that in yet. Want to put some in? Or I'll do it while you chop. So the reason why I'm choosing coconut oil over, let's say, butter is because I don't want the land animal fat of the butter. It's not working without help. You're going to have to hold that while I put the coconut oil in. And coconut oil has a much higher smoke point that butter doesn't have. So you can use avocado oil. Right now it's kind of cold. So the coconut oil is not liquid at room temperature. It's pretty solid. And I'm putting in a really, really nice amount. You can use this on a cast iron. This is a hex pan named for the hexagonal shape, and it's ceramic and copper, correct?
Ceramic and stainless steel with a copper core.
There you see. This was his Christmas present, so he knows all about it. Now you can start putting them in when you're ready. Okay, so just to keep showing you how to chop, here we go.
Yeah, and these are a little tougher to get through, so I'm not going to chop them as fast as like celery or something like that, because I don't want this messing up and losing a finger. Sweet potato is one of the hardest to kind of get a knife through, even if it is a sharp knife.
Oil splash.
A little bit.
Go a little bit slower when you release the first little bit of food into the pan when the oil is hot, so that you don't splash yourself and burn yourself.
That's what whiskey's for. An essential ingredient in chopping.
You know, my dad always used to have a martini when he was cooking too, and he cooked some pretty amazing dishes. So we're gonna start sauteing this up first, and what we really want to do is get all of this nice and brown. We want a little bit of a sear on the outside, but the reason why we chop them up so small is because we don't want them to take forever to cook either. Now I peeled them initially because you don't want to eat the peel from a sweet potato, but you can eat the peel from a parsnip, which I didn't bring over for you. Bad me. Say hi, Xander. Hi, Xander. What am I getting into over here, Mr. Walking Boy? My goodness. Here we go. Oh, throwing them everywhere. Run away. Try to be cleaner in your kitchen than he is. I think we might have chosen a too small pan for this endeavor.
That might be just, or we made too much.
Or we made too much. Well, that is definitely the Covington tradition. And if you know my father at all, he was the king of making way more than you could eat in a meal so that he had lots of leftovers. It's probably where I got it from. By the way, this is how you meal prep for future days, right? So the reason why we're making so much is so that we can have food for several days and only have to cook like this every once in a while. You know, a couple times a week. We can make something super fast, like chipless nachos in a given evening. But if we're going to cook this much food and go to this much trouble, and this isn't that much trouble, by the way, but if we're going to do that, then we want to go ahead. I mean, let's think of it like this. If you're going to cook for 2, you might as well cook for 8 and have leftovers. Mm-hmm. Unless you are one of those people that hates leftovers. So what Chris is doing is he's coring this apple. And now, most of it's been... Can you cut off that last little bit of skin? Because that's just not going to go right. Here we go. Thank you. So cut off the ends, and here we go. So he's got 2 halves. We're going to do the same thing he did with the sweet potato when it was laying flat, but this time, don't cut yourself while you're giving instructions. This time you can go a lot faster because apple is so much, it's so much more watery.
And it doesn't have tight fibers the way that sweet potato does.
Well, the sweet potato doesn't have much water. That's why they're so tight. So we cut it in half and then cut it in much smaller pieces like that.
I like to try to keep it together. It makes it easier for this last slice.
Well, as long as you can keep something together, then that's what matters. And apple goes in. I know you're thinking, apple? Why would you do that? Well, and they're not quite the same size as the other ones. Try to get this next apple the same size pieces. I'm just going to eat this so I can. Because of the apple honey seasoning that's going on the pork tenderloin. Plus, apples and sweet potatoes are kind of like harvest vegetables. Harvest time of year, the fall. It's a really great time to be enjoying these types of, fruits and things available to us. And then always pull out the bad ones.
Always pull out?
Always pull out the bad ones.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh, someone's off doing sketchy shit. Okay.
Better?
Yes, much better. That's what I want. I want that size. Wait, before you do that, let's do the parsnips. Because we might not need all that apple. You are not obligated to use all of the things that you peel and chop up, right? If you look at your pan and say, you know what, there's enough in there. I don't need to add any more, which, gosh, I might have to switch to the wok here in a minute. But we're not gonna do all of these parsnips either. We're gonna just probably do those few. Now watch how he does a parsnip, because it's the same length as a carrot, but it gets super thin on one part of it, and it can be really, really thick. So he cut it in half and then cut into these half moon shapes. And then he slices through the middle, and then cuts it into quarters, and then does these half moon shapes. I like that better because these are a little bit big. Yeah. So sometimes you'll find that as you're cutting along, you're like, that's too big. That's bigger than what I want. That's not the same size as everything else. And when you're making a compote, what you're really looking for is that it's the same size throughout all of the components of your compote so that everything cooks at the same rate. Now that was one of the reasons why I chose the sweet potatoes and apples is because when you dice up the sweet potatoes small like this, you're going to end up with, they're going to end up cooking really fast. Show off. They're going to end up cooking really fast. And so apples release a lot of their water when they cook, and that'll make a nice little caramelized compote. And then the parsnips will pick up some of that sweetness. And so I really think this is going to turn out well. Now, how I'm going to season it is going to be a mystery here in a minute. I'm going to think that one through. So we'll see you back in a heartbeat.
All right, so now we're prepping pork tenderloin. All I'm doing here is just rolling it in some paper towel to get the water off. These came packaged, so there's still a lot of the moisture, some of the blood. And just kind of getting all of that off of it so that the seasoning sticks better. If you try to put seasoning onto something that's fairly wet like this, it's kind of going to clump up and it'll start to fall off as you're handling it. So, and that's why they call it a dry rub, not a wet rub. And that's
not a paste.
Right, because it'll start to do that. So I just want to grab a couple of paper towels. I learned to do this from some chef I found on YouTube at some point along the way.
And we're passing it on to you.
Started doing it and haven't really looked back because it made that big of a difference. I used to not really do all that much. It looks like a little bit of prep work, but you get kind of quick at it. Just a couple of paper towels, and it's just get the majority of the water off. It's not about making it perfect. The salt that's in the seasoning is going to pull water out too. So that's why you also want to do it, as the salt displaces into the meat. And that's what also pulls a lot of the seasoning in as well. So I want to get the water out of the way so that the seasoning can do its work.
You sound so smart when you talk about it like that.
Do I?
Yes.
I have my moments.
You use the word displace.
Just wait till I start using words like osmosis.
Ooh. That's
Now we're
all the
good.
tenderloin. Now, so this is how many pounds of tenderloin?
That should be, so these were it's about 10 pounds.
This is how we can have so many good high protein meals. Just
Right.
cook it all at once because it's going to go on the barbecue.
Right, this is all going to fit on the barbecue. I can put more than this on the barbecue, but this is enough. And this will give us leftovers for a few days. This is breakfast,
Through
right?
the weekend at least.
Chop these up and put them in with some, like an egg omelet, or just put it on top of some egg. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Chop it up, put it in a bowl. You can mix it with some other stuff. Mix it with some rice. Mix it with some potatoes.
So what are you going to season it with?
So we're going to season it with... Where'd you put the triggers?
Oh, sorry. I was
So we're gonna
testing the
use-
spices for the compote.
Yeah, so we're using this apple and honey pork and poultry rub from Traeger's. And now that it's all kind of dry, and I like it a mix like this. I used to do it one seasoning at a time. I'd salt it and then garlic it and then put some other seasoning on. This is kind of all in one. Much, much easier. And if you are into it, you can make your own seasonings. Just kind of mixing stuff together. Most seasonings are salt and sugar as a base. That actually, it's not all for flavor either. The salt and sugar actually helps it pull into the meat itself. Although some of that
Chemical
depends on the
reaction.
time. Yeah. Opens up the cells, brings some of the flavor in.
Oh, I thought
But-
you were going to go heavier on the rub.
I mean, I
The
can.
seasoning. Well, you know me. I
Yeah.
love all the flavors. And that is going to marry really, really well with the seasoning that I put on the compote. So I want to have a lot of that flavor that comes through on that.
Yeah.
Because
The good
pork
thing
is such a mild flavor that you can put anything on it and have it really
Right.
shine as the flavor.
especially tenderloin that doesn't have a lot of fat to it. There's a little bit here on the outside, but this isn't much. Like, that's a few grams of fat. That's not much. There's kind of a chunk there, but that'll melt off on the barbecue. That'll kind of make crispy bits. The barbecue will take care of most of it.
So that's why you're not worrying about trimming. Okay.
Not for this. If it was like pork shoulder or something, I would trim it a little bit more. I mean, this kind of piece, I'm just going to rip that off so that it doesn't just burn on the barbecue. Yeah, but pork tenderloin, I usually don't bother trimming. I'm not going to trim that. That's not worth it. You're kind of just...
It's mostly tendon anyway.
It's a lot of soft tissue, and pork tenderloin is not a fatty part of any kind of animal. It's also called back straps on like deer and venison and things like that, elk.
So the tenderloin itself is super lean.
Right, and it's one of those few meats, especially on pork, that you can do medium rare. You can even do it rare if that's your thing. I kind of like it a little bit rare. It's one of the few, as long as it's, farmed pork, not rare pork, or not wild pork. Wild pork you should always cook fully and have it tested and all of that. But very few people eat wild pork, and if they do, they usually know what they're doing. So, but for this, I'm going to go for like a medium rare. Partly so that, because it's pork tenderloin, this is very pure meat. It doesn't need to be fully cooked. This is not like pork chops or something or some other cut where you kind of want to cook it more fully. It'll do just fine at like a medium rare. And then when you reheat it, when we cook it, when we warm it up, then it becomes a little more well done, but it's not going to get tough. It won't like lose all of its moisture and all of that. So this is ready to go to the barbecue.
Awesome.
Anyway.
Yep. So this is him. He already warmed up the barbecue.
Right, so we got the barbecue nice and hot already. I've got it pretty much at full temperature. And I want my grill hot whenever I start because it's going to cool down as soon as I put the meat on. So you want everything nice and hot to start. And I wanted to clean my grill a little bit too. And so for this one, I've got this tool, works perfect. Usually barbecues come with a tool. This is the best thing to use, not gimmicky brushes or stuff like that. Wait till it's hot and it breaks up all the stuff that was on here. And I just want to give it a quick, bust stuff off of it. I usually wait till it's hot because it comes off way easier. And then I'll just like take the side edge of it. For the most part, that's good enough. Now, I'm going to put these on. I'm going to leave them on for about 6 minutes per side. And with pork tenderloin, I kind of consider these to be three-sided to a certain extent. They're a little odd shaped, but I think when you flip most of them, there's kind of three sides to it. Mm-hmm. There's two and then three. They're a little bit triangle shaped. And I'm going to go about 6 minutes per side, flipping them in between. And that should give me just lots of nice grill marks and roughly about a medium rare cook. If you wanted them more well done, look for about 8 minutes, maybe 9 per side, but not much more than that or they'll just start to be overdone.
And now you're going to set the alarm on your phone to make sure that it's just the time you want. Okay, the meat's done.
All right, now I'm going to slice it. Some of these thicker bits might be where it's a little more rare. Done on purpose so that we can reheat it later. Let's see where it's doing right now. So that's what I mean. This is a lot of meat. Looks really good. It's very tasty. Let's see what this looks like. A little bit. So it's a little bit rare on this side. I'm not going to eat that right now. But pork tenderloin has all these thin pieces. That's why I cook it a little more rare in these thicker bits because we're just going to reheat them later anyway. So let's take this. Cut through here where that's pretty much, this is like well done.
Oh my God.
And then it gets more and more.
That is so good.
It's very juicy.
That seasoning has like almost caramelized on top of it.
Yeah, because there's...
It's so good.
Right, and so I'm getting into... Yeah, that's right with that one.
Okay.
Yeah, there's enough brown sugar.
The baby's running around and getting into things, so I just don't want him to grab my glass of wine and knock it over, hurt himself. Wow, that is so good.
Yep, and that's what that looks like.
That's perfect. We're going to plate all of that.